Welcome to another episode of Before You Kill Yourself with your host, Leo Flowers. I am Leo Flowers. If you are in immediate distress, please call 1 800 SUICIDE or 1 800 273 TALK. First, I want to say Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Thank you for being here. You showed up. We got through 2020. This is a new year, a new you, a new us. I thank you for showing up. I really appreciate the downloads. We're at over 100,000 downloads. It means a lot of you are listening, but not only listening, but you're sharing it with your friends and family and enemies and employees and coworkers and uh, everybody, your neighbors. I really appreciate that. We have a bunch of 5-star reviews over there. Warms my heart, lets me know that what I'm doing is effective. And what we're doing together is we're building a community so that we don't feel like we're the only ones going through what we're going through. Just the fact that so many people are downloading and listening. And throughout the world, I have listeners and we have listeners in the Netherlands and Asia and South America and obviously North America and Africa, throughout the world. Everybody is tuning in. So thank you, thank you, thank you for that. Um, I'm excited about today's episode. Now, before I say this, at the end of the episode, it gets cut short. I had some audio issues, which I can't explain. I haven't been able to remedy. I've talked to other people. We couldn't remedy it. So it seems to abruptly end just a little bit. There is a closing, but she doesn't give her the typical, you don't hear the before you kill yourself question. Yeah. Now, for some of you who prefer YouTube, right? Maybe you don't have access to download the episode for whatever reason. We have been uploading these episodes in its entirety onto YouTube. If you go to Leo Flowers on YouTube, you'll see, you also see some links to my stand up if you want to check that out. I post book reviews also, which I haven't done in a while. I should because I'm just burning through books. But you'll see the episodes on there. All right. Today's guest, Alenka Artnik, who is a 4-time world champion freediver. And if you don't know what a freediver is, they go to depths of, in her case, 374 feet in the ocean on one breath. No oxygen tank, no nada. Only the bodysuit and fins, 374 feet, one breath. And so she, on November 8th, she she broke the record on November 8th of 2020. And so she is the world record holder in the women's division. And I read about her in the New York Times. And the reason why I was intrigued by her story is once she started late in the freediving game in her 30s. And so there's a bit of a pre-midlife crisis there. But two, she shares some of the traumas and tragedies that have happened in her childhood that have led her to this place. And we don't go into a lot of detail about it. We kind of keep it surface level. So it's not too specific. It's not triggering. That's not the intention. So you can listen all the way through. This is a story of empowerment. As Alenka, I don't think it's mentioned in the episode, but she is getting engaged. So congratulations if you're listening right now. And with that said, let's jump into the episode. And now, you're in Slovenia, right?
I am not in Slovenia actually. I haven't been in Slovenia for like 1 year already, almost
Okay.
1 year.
Yeah.
And I am living I'm living with my partner, and he's from Switzerland. So we are here right now, and it's just basically on the other side of the Alps. But because of all the restrictions and everything, it's quite impossible to travel right now. So I am here. Yeah.
Oh, right on. So you're getting, I imagine you're doing a lot of skiing right now and a lot of outdoor snow activity.
A lot of outdoor skiing. I'm not really a skier. I would like to relearn it because I did it when I was a kid. But I'm coming from the coast, so obviously I'm more like a sea person. But my partner, he's a good skier, and they're going with a bunch of friends. They're going for skiing this Saturday. But outdoor here, it's amazing. Like we're basically living like below a really amazing mountain. It's really nice.
Oh, now being up in the mountains, some people have a hard time sleeping in high altitudes. How does high altitudes affect you in your sleep?
Actually, we are not. So this is not a high altitude. We are not living in the mountains, But the mountains are all around. So if you want to go in the mountain for a little trekking, it's very possible. It's just next door. But here, the altitude, it's I think, I don't know, maybe 400 or something. We're not high.
Yeah, and you mentioned being a sea person. I'm excited to have you on because you hold so many world records in free diving,
Mm-hmm.
which is interesting because Michelle and I, my girlfriend, we were just watching. I forget what movie or documentary we were watching about free diving. It's about this free diver in I think the Philippines or one of those islands, and he didn't have much means, and then some people rallied around to help him break the record. He ended up not being able to break the record, but it was just cool to watch his attempt.
Yeah, I know the
And
guy. He's Bajau. He's one of the from the Bajau. It's like kind of we call them like sea gypsy, and it's from the Philippines. It was quite special because he's from this sea nomads family, and obviously they're living a very different lifestyle like we do. But he got in contact with Filipino freedivers, and they helped him to get the proper gear and everything. And he has never been like really training freediving, and he's really really talented. So, but I'm sure break the records sooner or later.
well, one of the reasons I'm excited to have you on is, in order to free dive, and when I read, an article about you in the New York Times, great article, by the way, you talked about how the key to surviving at those depths that you go to, you're holding your breath. I think the women's record is 9 minutes, the men's is 11 minutes, is to stay calm. But people say stay calm, stay relaxed all the time. But what does that mean, and how do you practice that?
Yeah, basically, from just saying you have to stay cool, stay calm, to actually being in that mindset. It's a big work. It can be a lifetime work, and depends. Some people can get into this mindset, let's say, sooner. Some people need maybe more time to practice. For sure, the best tool for that would be meditation. Meditation is, I think, also the most known tool, how to learn to relax. But actually, focused breathing, it's the strongest tool. And with the proper breathing, with the right breathing, we can actually even manipulate our heart rate, so that because when we have like a lower heart rate, obviously we burn less oxygen, so we can manipulate to have a lower heart rate, and just in general to feel much more relaxed. So yeah, you need to also have a big confidence in yourself. And obviously, again, this doesn't just come, you need to work a lot. You need to commit yourself to this. In my case, that's freediving. But I think in everything that, if you want to succeed in whatever that is, you need to commit yourself 100% into that. And I think only like that, then it's possible to get this, like the best results. So I would say the combination, of course, a lot of work, and with a lot of work that there comes the confidence, and practice. A lot of patience also. Patience, I think, is very important, especially in freediving. It's really, really important because we are getting to obstacles like nonstop all the time. It's not like the door of the sea of the depth is just wide open to me all the time. And let's be clear here, it's not. So because I am still, a human with all, let's say, a backpack from the surface. So yeah, it's a lot of work. Yeah.
I know, I read a lot about Wim Hof breathing techniques, and Tom Nestor, who wrote a book called Breathe, and he also does some free diving. And some of them have so many different breathing tactics, like 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out, 4 in, 4 out. What kind of breathing practices are you doing outside the water, and then how is it different inside when you're free diving?
Yeah, the one from Will, this is now like super like worldwide popular. Many people like to try it. He also kind of implement hyperventilation or hyperventilation, which is like very fast and shallow breathing. We don't really use this kind of breathing technique in freediving because it kind of reduce the level of CO2 in our body, and CO2 is actually kind of like alarm. It's like the one that is telling us where are we, in terms of like being still conscious, because we're doing everything on breath hold. So CO2, even though it makes us feel very uncomfortable, it's our friend. And if we are doing hyperventilation, the level of CO2 drops drastically, and we might not have the good feeling like when is the time to come out from the water. So we use different techniques. But like pranayama is like it's a whole education about the whole branch about breathing, and it's huge. I still need to learn a lot about it. But what I do, it's actually very, very simple. I always say to people, it's super simple. The important thing I think at the beginning is actually that, so you try to kind of like, I'm just gonna tell what is like the exercise that I do, and that I also suggest to other people, even out of sport, not just like freedivers. An exercise that it's really good to all calm down, so relax or just train focus, because as you know, like in the modern life, we have so many informations all the time, and it's really hard to be focused. So with this focused breathing, as I call it, you can just lay down on the floor, and basically you breathe with the belly, like maybe 5 minutes, but very, very relaxed. You don't control the breathing, especially at the beginning. You really try just to kind of naturally breathe as it comes, but we try to breathe with the belly. The thing is that also modern human, we in the let's say the modern human is breathing more with the upper part. That means with the chest, and very shallow. And this is usually when we are in stress. This is the pattern that we use for breathing, and it's not really good. We need to oxygenate our body, and that means we need to do like long and let's say like long exhale and with the belly. So yeah, this is what I do. I just lay down 5 minutes, belly breathing. And the exhale, we try to do it a bit longer, but at the beginning it's good to be like super, natural and not to control it too much. And the exhale should be longer. Yeah. And with that, you try to be focused with the breath. This is your only, let's say, kind of goal, to be focused on the inhale and on the exhale, even though the mind obviously will fly away everywhere. Like, we call it monkey mind, and that's very normal. And it's also very important that the people don't get frustrated at the beginning, because this is super normal. And you just need to keep practicing. And after some time, it's so good when you see that the mind is really like listening to what you want, actually, it's following your kind of orders. And it's a good feeling.
It's such a great feeling, and a lot of times, I'll sit because I have so many meetings throughout the day, and sometimes I just have maybe 5 minutes or a few minutes in between each, and I've started practicing meditating in between each meeting or session, even if it's just for a minute, or as you refer to it as belly breathing, and I find that even just 1 minute of just sitting with myself lowers my heart rate. I realize that I haven't really been belly breathing for the past hour, and it's enough to recharge me. A lot of people go grab caffeine or coffee or tea to wake them up, but I find that just a few minutes of just focusing on my breath, settling down, getting grounded is enough to recharge and rejuvenate me.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. It's interesting because in the past I would also like take a coffee, and coffee actually is just making you more anxious, you know. So breathing, people do the breathing. It does magics, really.
And so I want to talk a bit about obviously about free diving and what that is because it looks terrifying. I follow a couple free divers. There's a guy I think Guillaume. I forget how to pronounce his name. Guillaume.
Guillaume.
Yeah, and he produces these beautiful videos of himself free diving. And so, can you explain to us what free diving is, and then what got you into it?
So Guillaume Neri, he was he's like a multi-world champion. He stopped competing for now. I hope he will continue maybe sometime in the future. But yeah, he is the one doing like really amazing underwater videos, and definitely those videos are also helping, you know, to kind of spread and to promote the sport as it is like amazing and beautiful. So free diving, you know, the main thing is obviously you are diving, but you're diving on breath hold. So you're not breathing air underwater. It's not scuba diving. And before the dive, you need to relax. You need to learn to relax. And then you do like a big, nice, relaxed inhale. And then you go down. Of course, there is a difference when you're doing just like fun diving, or as we call it, snorkeling, or a bit deep snorkeling, or as let's say when we are diving on the rope, which is basically free diving as a sport. But the main thing would be in this case, when we are doing like a training or as a competition or as a sport, we are diving, free diving along the rope. We set the depth before we go down, and we do a big inhale. And then, you know, we are attached with a lanyard on the rope because of the safety reason, obviously. There might be some current underwater. So it's, you know, it's just for safety that we are attached on this main rope. And then like vertically down with a rope, you are basically kicking, and then you turn, and then you go or come up with one breath. Yeah.
It's remarkable, because I was watching a video on freediving and what it's like, and I didn't realize that at a certain depth, when you're going down, there's, first the water is trying to, your buoyancy, because you're holding your breath, is trying to pull you up. But then there's a certain depth that you reach where now the water, the buoyancy is pulling you down, and you can just, and so what does that feel like when you're going from that transition of you're kicking your way down and now you feel yourself being pulled down? I would imagine that first time had to be terrifying. Did you panic and want to come back up, or what was that experience like?
Okay, yeah. So maybe just to tell very quickly why this happens. So obviously the pressure with the depth is increasing. So every 10 meters, there's additional bar. And the air in the body is squeezing, which means that with the depth, we are getting, like, we're losing the buoyancy, or we are becoming negatively buoyant. This means that at some point you start sinking. You start sinking like a rock, basically. And until, let's say, it depends from athlete to athlete. It depends how much weight you have, what's the thickness of the suit. But anyway, let's say you come. I kick until like around 50 meters. And then basically I stop kicking, like from 50 meters on, because the air is so squeezed and you are negatively buoyant, then you start sinking. And in that moment, it's like super important that you relax your body max, like as much as possible, that you really relax all the little muscles in the body, because, all tension, it's a physical tension, but also mental tension is burning oxygen. So here it's really, really important in this part. We call it free fall. And it's really important that you basically surrender to this pressure, because if you're kind of like in a cramp, in a physical cramp, it's going to be impossible to equalize. And this is also one thing that you need to learn: equalization. And you have to equalize the pressure all the time. Let's say every kind of like maybe 3 meters, you need to equalize, until the bottom. And the deeper you go, the harder it is to equalize, because the air is getting smaller and smaller. So this technique is really, really subtle, and you have to be super, super focused on one hand and super relaxed on the other. So you need to find the right balance between focus and relaxation. But maybe just a word about this moment when you start free falling. It's like amazing, really, really amazing. It feels almost like you are falling into universe. Like it's like the feeling is so, so, so amazing. Obviously, because you have to relax and you're not thinking. Your let's say mental processes there are not like on the surface. You're not thinking the same way as when you are on the surface. It's if you can come to this mindset, or let's say to this state when basically you're just so in the present moment and you are not thinking, you're not analyzing. And this combined with this free falling, I mean, this is really like, it's a spiritual situation. It's a spiritual experience. It doesn't happen every time, but when it happens, it's really magical. Like, it's interesting because on one hand, you are really kind of alone down there, because your safety divers are waiting for you like the last 30, 35 meters. So down there in the deep, you in the depth, you are alone. But the thing is, the irony is that when you're in this mindset, in this, in this state, it's you feel really connected. You feel like really being a part of the whole thing, of the whole ocean, sea, universe. You see, you're completely. It's not like on the surface. On the surface, you have your very strong ID, and you have to work so much for this ID, and you have to prove all the time, and it's really hard. While down there, you feel like you belong there. You feel like you are just a part, like they say, a drop in the ocean, and it's everything is okay, and nothing, nobody is judging, and it's like this is the ultimate, in my opinion, the ultimate feeling.
I'm so glad that you brought that up in terms of the feeling of not feeling alone, because it's the holidays right now. A lot of people do feel alone, that, that maybe they don't have gifts up under the Christmas tree. Maybe they don't even have a tree. And you bring up something that's I experienced when I go hiking up in the mountains. And further up I go, the more connected I feel. And the further below you go, the more connected you feel. But what's also interesting is that, like you also mentioned, you have to get past that point of, you have to, toggle between focus and relaxation, because there's a point during a hike where you want to turn around, where it's getting too hard, where the muscles start to burn, the air becomes a little thin. And then, but if you keep going and you slow down your pace and you keep going, you start to acclimate and, or as you say, equalize, so that you can keep going and you can adjust and adapt to the thinner air, to the higher altitude, or to the lower depths. I would imagine that when I think about the ocean, I think sharks, right? Like I think sharks, I think squids, octopus, all these things. How do you deal with that idea, or do you not feel threatened by that at all because you feel like you're so at one with the ocean?
I will ask you something. How do you deal with the sharks and octopus, the ones on the surface?
I stay away from them.
Yeah.
I don't go where they go.
You know how I deal with them? Actually, it's like they are part of it. They are part of everything, of the humanity, part of humanity, part of the universe. And it's right like that. And even though they go on nerves, And on the surface or underwater, I think it's very similar. We just need to kind of accept that this is how it is. It's part of life. And honestly, like to more directly answer to your question, I don't really think about sharks. I know this is, if I think rationally, this is their world, and I am kind of entering their world, but I don't really think if, like, by the way, the sharks are not that dangerous. They kind of, this is a huge myth, and they're making a huge guilt to these poor animals. You have to know, because of the movies, there are maybe 2 species of sharks that are maybe a bit more aggressive, but you don't just meet them, and it's very important that people know the sharks are not dangerous. You can swim with sharks. But let's say octopus, I am very allergic to octopus, and wherever I go, I always get stung. And while my friends, they don't, and I get stung, and I will just, accept it. It is how it is. It's kind of like a price to be there. But I think acceptance, it's it's very important.
I love your response of how do I deal with the sharks on land. It took me a second to quite get what you were really saying. And you're right. I was just in Laredo, Mexico, and walking along the beach, not even in the water, and there were 2 pit bulls that tried to attack. And it's like they're people can be quote unquote sharks. Other animals can be sharks. Your body can attack you. Like we're always vulnerable and susceptible. And so I love your idea of like, we just have to accept that sharks exist in the world, not just in the water. And so you might as well pursue and do the thing that you want to do regardless, and commit to it. You mentioned commitment earlier. I would imagine that when you met your boyfriend, you probably wanted him to propose the first day. You're like, are you committed to me or not?
Yeah, I was, but I am not so young anymore. So I need to feel that it's a good material, how my dad would used to say, So I was testing a little bit, like, is he a good material? Like, should I continue or what? But it was a good material, and he is a good material. And actually, we just recently got engaged. So yeah.
Congratulations. Yeah, that's right. First announcements on the podcast. I love it.
I was thinking, like, because next year I'm going to be 40, and I was thinking, like, man, if you don't propose to me, I didn't say to him, I was thinking, if you don't propose to me before I'm 40, I'm going to dump you. It's a joke.
I love that. You got to set some expectations, right? When I read about the, I was looking at, how many people die from free diving. And of course, people do die from free diving as they die from anything else. However, one of the things that was interesting is that most of the people who die from free diving are free diving alone. And I remember there's a quote that says, you go alone, you go faster, but together you go further. And I wonder, like, if that's what you found, because I'm sure you've been told about the people who have died. And besides being alone, what is like the biggest mistake that most free divers make?
Okay, so this is also something like people that they don't know this activity, this sport. They think that like free divers are just like dying, and it's also another myth. The thing is that I'm talking about free divers that like did, let's say, at least a beginner course, because the most important rule in free diving is not to free dive alone. Never free dive alone, and it's like it's so important. They really try to, like, when they are like the instructors and everybody around you, it's like you don't do that. It's like this is almost like a crime if you do that, So free divers, we usually don't free dive alone. We never free dive alone when we are on the rope. we always have training buddies, and we always have safety that are safetying us, because anyway, you cannot even relax if you are alone. So, but what can happen is that people that they don't have experiences, and then they do some free diving, let's say, in like during the holidays, they go for summer holiday somewhere, and they go a bit too deep, and maybe they're surprised by the current. They have very bad gear. They get a panic, and something can happen. Another group of, like, let's say, they are, risky, are the spearfishers, because the spearfishers, they are very, very, I would say, experienced, but they usually do this activity alone. And these deaths, unfortunately, they happen among spearfishers. But in terms of safety is like the most important thing in freediving. And you will really, like, there were like just really few accidents in freediving. I think it's very important that people know that.
Yeah, in the article, that New York Times article, you talked about how you were working in a shop. I think your family owned a business, and you were working in it, maybe up until like 30, and you were kind of feeling like you wanted to do something else. Can you talk to us about like what that feeling was? Because so many people feel stuck. They might feel stuck in their jobs. They might feel stuck in their relationship. And so, like, how scary was it for you to say, I'm gonna pivot or change from this thing that I've been doing for so long and commit myself to something else, especially at the age of 30? I would imagine people start much younger in such a sport.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I am a late flower. This is for sure. It takes me some time to figure out something sometimes in life. So the job I was doing didn't belong to my family. It was just, I was just working for a company. And the thing is that, I was working like any, like, normal person, like a normal lifestyle, but I was in a very, very unhappy place for kind of like almost a decade. And I think it's important that I mentioned that, because it's interesting that my background was quite heavy. And I'm coming from, let's say, let's say as I said, the background was very hard. Like my dad, he was a heavy alcoholic, and I had a brother. He was a bit older. He was 10 years older, and he was a heavy drug addict. And then there was my mom and me and my sister, and my mom was somewhere in between, trying to kind of, maintain kind of like normality in our family, but it was really, really hard, and I think also me and my sister, we were kind of canalizing, a lot of heaviness that was happening there. And I think when I was around 18, 20, until then, I would say I managed quite well this craziness that was happening around me all my childhood. I was in sport, which for sure helped me a lot. I was training kayak. But then at 18, everything it had to come on the surface, because probably I was just holding too much stuff, too much, I would call it, sorry for this, too much shit, especially things that, didn't belong to me. And, but when you're a child, you don't know how to, let's say, select what is good, what's not good, what's yours, what's not yours. You're like a sponge. You take everything on you. And at some point, enough is enough. You cannot do it anymore. So, because we are not so open, the civilization, the humanity is not so open. And actually, there are so many taboos around all these things, I felt very, very lonely. And I dropped school in that moment. I dropped sport in that moment. And I remember the first few years, I kind of locked myself in, between four walls. I didn't want to go out. I didn't want to just like, I was afraid of life because there were so many danger around me, all my life. And then at some point, I remember I started like somehow that was not enough. I had to open this ventil. Do you call it ventil?
The vent.
Like ventil, it's kind of like kind of like a pipe. Let's call it
Oh, like the valve.
The valve. The
Yeah.
valve. So that all these things came up because it was just too much. And we humans can be quite creative, and it was the only way how I knew how to do it. It was basically by sabotaging myself with, drinking too much and, partying and having like really bad relationships and things like that. I was basically hurting myself, but probably I had to do that because it was the only way how I would kind of like, when you come to the bottom, the really very, very bottom. I was there. I was digging very deep, but I had to do that. I had to be there in order to kind of, in my case, it was letting go. I remember, I think I was around 26, something like 26, 27, maybe it was the hardest. And it was so hard, also because, I am a smart girl and I was, let's say, understanding everything even more. So it was even harder. And I think usually these things happen to smart people. Also, let's say I was more aware, and maybe more empathic, and it was even harder. So I was basically standing on that bridge, and I remember, and I was thinking, I was just thinking, okay, what to do? It's like I cannot live like this anymore. I don't belong to this world. I'm just suffering. I'm destroying myself. I don't want to live like this. And I remember I looked at the sky, like I said, universe, do whatever you want with me because I cannot do it anymore. And I think, and I'm pretty sure actually, in that moment when I let all this heaviness or this heavy backpack, when I literally said, I was talking to the universe and said, bam, I give this backpack to you because I cannot hold it anymore. Things start happening. Life starts, changing. It starts rotating in a different direction. And this is also when freediving came in my life. And I definitely believe that, at that moment, probably I just gave up in terms of like, I said, I don't want this. I cannot hold this anymore. And actually this backpack belonged to me, it was heaviness from everybody, but probably me. So I was like, universe, this is yours, and then I could, kind of let more space for good things for me to happen. It's just like that. So basically, when I was like, no, this doesn't belong to me, I give it to you, I also opened myself for good things. And the best thing that could ever happen, and that was freediving.
Wow, what a powerful story. And you bring up such a great point that smart people who are empathic, they feel the pain so much more because we're so aware of what's happening, why it's happening. And so, in the Bible, it says, with knowledge comes sorrow. And so it's like the more we are aware, then we feel more joy and we feel more excitement, but we also feel more pain and we feel more hurt. But, what a beautiful moment for you to recognize that pain that you had been carrying around, that hurt, wasn't yours. It was someone else's. And so to consciously say to the universe, here, you can take this back. Like, I don't need this. Like, this is heavy. Like, I got places to go. And so what a beautiful moment. And was there some, was there anything else that you coupled with that moment in terms of getting rid of the backpack? You know, I could see someone physically like just putting a bunch of bricks in a backpack and then dumping it in the ocean. Or did you journal? Was there anything else that you did to help navigate you through that moment?
Actually, the thing is that when I did that back then, I didn't realize what just happened. Later, I was understanding actually when was this breaking point for me. What happened? Because many people are asking me still, like, okay, but what did you do? Like, how did you come from that darkness to this? And now I know what actually happened. And I think I was just so desperate that I just really couldn't hold it anymore. And this is when you're so deep down there, you just let go the control, also. So I think it didn't happen overnight, and it took me. It's a process. It's always a process. And I think it's very important that you just keep going. And from then on, there were still some very, very heavy things happening, and it's very interesting because I will tell you also this thing, and I think it's very interesting. It's not like, from then on, the universe helped me and I was living happily after, no, it doesn't. Forget it. It was actually, there were some other things that I had to process after that, and it was crazy. It was kind of crazy to think, because in the same period, I lost my dad, and we also had two cats that they were like living with us forever. Like they were 18 years both. So they were like a big part of our family. I remember when I was a kid and when it was really, really hard, I took one of them and I just went into bed with this cat, and they really, really helped me to stay normal, So the cats were actually, it's very interesting. That's why I always say animals are like saving us so, so much. And it's so cruel when we are being cruel to them, because they are really saving us. And if I am normal today, it's because of these cats, really, because I didn't completely block my feelings, because when you are all the time exposed to danger, a normal person would close, because you don't want this pain. A child would do it even sooner. So with the cats, I could still, give them love, and that's so important. So thank you, girls. I just said thank you to the girls there in the sky with the whole gang. So anyway, those two cats, they die one after another, and my dad too, and they were like the three musketeers. I don't know, do you call it like that?
Yeah, three
right?
musketeers, yes.
Exactly. And me and my sister, we were living like 1 hour away from this home, and it was just crazy. They all got cancer on the liver, and in like half a year, all of them, they just passed away. And in the same, after that, I had a friend. He was like kind of more than a friend to me, and I also lost him. Basically, we broke the relationship. The job I was working at, also that thing ended up because of this recession and everything. So we had to close the shop. And then also my cat that I had in my home got, she also died basically. And that was too much, that was for me, she was my baby, and that was too much for me. It was like, and this is when I said to the universe, okay, now you stop. But I also understood something else, because I was still living that kind of lifestyle. I knew more and more that the lifestyle I was living, this is not me. And I was kind of, flirting with the idea to change something, but all these things that happen in such a short time, really, that was such a cruel, let's say, very raw message from the universe, which I understood as, girl, you need to pack and you need to go in the world. You need to go and you need to find your path. You need to explore and you need to go. And I really believe that all these things happen because I had nothing else to hold on at home. So I packed and I left. And that was, like 5 years ago. And I'm still on this path, and many good things happen in between, And now I'm talking here with you.
Yes, and you're engaged. You're talking here with me with a ring on the finger. That's right. You mentioned your brother also drinking heavily, doing drugs. How is he in all this at the current moment?
My brother, he died when I was 23. This is already, I was already in a crisis back then. Years older, so he was 33, and he was at the end, his body was like so weak because he couldn't. I think at the end he was basically on methadone, not on heavy drugs, but on methadone, and basically at the end his body just collapsed, from all the drugs and poison, and he was alone. He was alone in this detoxing clinic. But my brother, he was also heavy because he was also a narcissist and borderliner, and I'm sure that it's very, very heavy to deal with these people. It's very hard to let them close to you, and even though I felt so much, like pity for him because he was there, but I was also struggling big time back then. So, but yeah, I always felt to be sorry because the last night, then the night when he passed away, he called me, and I just didn't want to answer because I didn't feel like talking to him. I was like just probably too tired, or something. And yeah, and the next morning he passed away. And there is also, it's quite, I would say, interesting now because, I could never really cry after his death, probably because I was still very angry on him. Not probably, for sure. I was, there were so many bad things happening, around him, my parents, they were like the first parents in the late 80s, beginning of 90s in Slovenia, talking about this taboo, having a child that is a drug addict. And they exposed themselves to the TV. Like, can you imagine how much courage they had to have? Because in those days, nobody was talking about this problem, And then, eventually he went to this community in Thailand. He was there 3 years and to get clean, And he came back and we were all full of hopes and everything. And then he started again, So it was super, super painful and many, many other things. So yeah, for me, it was very hard to be, to grieve after him. But that I have to say this experience was very interesting. And yeah, I was already, free diving. It was already when I moved 5 years ago, when I moved to Dahab, to Egypt. For depth freediving. And in one of the dives, I went down, and at the bottom plate, I think I did around 85 that day. At the bottom plate, that means the moment when I turned and I start kicking up, he just came in front of me, like I just saw his face in front of me. And then I was like, whoa, what are you doing here? Obviously, he surprised me because I didn't think about him. And he just came, and it was very interesting because his face was not like when you are, people when they are under drugs, they have this face, these eyes that exactly that they are like on other somewhere else, like zombie, I call it. And he was not like looking like that. He was looking so stable, so clear, so peaceful and strong. And I was like, okay. And he was still front of me, like I had this image of him. And then I said to myself, okay, if you're here, then let's go together to the surface, And I came up from the water, and I had this smile on my face, also my training buddy. She told me that there was something different with this dive. I told her later what happened. But then the funny thing is that when I came home, and I was alone, and I remember I was doing some stretching, probably in a yoga mat, and I started thinking about what happened this morning, and I start crying. The first time after he died, it was probably it was more than 10 years. After more than 10 years, I started crying after him for the first time. It's almost like this process of grieving started with him, because I was really sorry, that that maybe that even I couldn't help him back then, but I was too young. But I was so sorry that that he was not strong enough to choose to go out of it, to choose a different path in his life. And in the water, I could see him, how he would be if he was strong enough, if he chose another life, and I was really, I was crying, and I was just very sorry that he is not with us anymore.
You brought up a good point, and something that the research has continually showed for people who have left rehab. There's a high relapse rate of people once they leave rehab, within the first 30 days. But a lot of the research attributes that relapse to them going back into the same environment that they left. And so it's interesting that for 3 years, he got himself clean. He was in Thailand, and then he comes back home, and now he's back in that same environment, exposed to the same triggers, the same people, and because none of that's been worked on. The stuff at home hasn't been worked on. The environment hasn't been worked on. The things that have been contributing to it hasn't been. So, I bring this up so that the listeners out there who are struggling with addiction and are trying to figure out why they keep relapsing, so many people who have struggled with addiction on the podcast have mentioned the importance of changing their environment. For you, it's like, it's an extreme example of going to the depths of the ocean to find peace, to find connection, to find tranquility. For me, it's going up into the mountains. And so to change your environment and know that it's not just enough to go into a detox lab and expect that that's going to stick forever.
No. It's after that, it's a hard work. It's a hard work. And I think that, as you said, it's super important to change the environment, and because also there are sometimes maybe there's some people that are just triggering something in you, and you cannot help it. You don't know how to protect yourself, but it's very important that you keep having this kind of therapies, but in my opinion, and I know what is addiction, because look, I was living among addiction. I understand addiction. I was also on a thin line there. So for me, I would say the most important thing is discipline, and it's very interesting because for many years I hated this word because it represented to me something that is like taking my freedom. And it's so ironic because it's just the opposite. Discipline is actually giving you the freedom. And it's so interesting.
Yeah, Jocko Willink, who was a Navy SEAL, or former Navy SEAL, but I think once a SEAL, always a SEAL. He wrote a book called Discipline Equals Freedom. And he talks about that because when you have discipline, we say restriction, but when you kind of narrow your parameters or give yourself boundaries, basically, it gives you more energy to put into the things that you really need to focus on. It gives you more energy to commit to the things that give you purpose and meaning instead of spreading yourself thin and, dissipating your energy into all these different areas. I'm not religious, but it's kind of like when the Bible says, you can't serve two gods at once. You can't be both a free diver and a drug addict. Something's going to give, right? So one of the guys are going to win. So, you have to pick one. And when you commit to something, that means you have to give up other things.
Yeah, exactly. Very, 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 very. I agree 100% with the SEAL guy also. I need to find his book, by the way.
Yeah, Discipline Equals Freedom. I'll put a link in the show notes, and then I'll message that to you also.
Thank you, Alenka, for being a part of this podcast. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. Remember, this podcast is not a substitute for you going to get help, for you calling a 1-800-SUI-CIDE, or going to thrivewithleo.com for one-on-one coaching with yours truly. Let's get to tomorrow together.